Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live Recorded. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today. We've got a pre-recorded show. You can see I'm still here in Arlington, Texas, but today is our last day. We're wrapping up the conference, and I've got just a little bit of time to throw together a show because we've got some news to get into. The big news is that YouTube, where you may be watching this right now, is making some pretty big changes to some of the stuff that we talk about. They've got policies about COVID and vaccines that they're now sort of tightening up a little bit. And so we're going to dive into this. And we, of course, want to make sure that we're following YouTube's rules. I am a lawyer. I know what it's like to go into a forum like a courtroom and not be allowed to do whatever you want to do. And so YouTube, it's sort of their playground. And so we're going to play by the rules. And so we're going to take a look at this. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that I think that this policy, the idea that you cannot continue to have conversations about very pertinent, relevant things that are going on in society, the fact that YouTube is sort of clamping down, I think is highly problematic. But we still want to make sure that we can have meaningful conversations, that we can still discuss the issues to the best of our ability. And if not, well, then we're going to have to make decisions about where we continue to talk and stream. And so let's take a quick look at what's happening with this policy, and then we'll dive into some more vaccine news because there's a lot of it. First and foremost, NBC is telling us that YouTube is cracking down on anti-vaccine videos and banning major accounts. Let's make sure we get our laser pointer on over here. We can see this was written by Brandy Zadrozny today. It says YouTube announced a total ban on Wednesday on vaccine misinformation and termination of several accounts from prominent anti-vaccine influencers, including Joseph Mercola and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's basically been banned everywhere. YouTube is citing, quote, the need to remove egregious, harmful content. And so we talk a lot about the vaccines here. We've talked a lot about all of the COVID policies and all of the government's response to all of the pandemic pandemonium that's been taking place all over the entire country and the world. And so we want to make sure that we're kind of abreast of what's happening here. The new policy was crafted as the company began to see false claims about COVID-19 vaccines and spill over into misinformation about vaccines in general, according to a company blog post. And so let's go right to the source, right into the belly of the beast, and see what YouTube is talking about here. If you go over and you read their blog post, it says managing harmful vaccine content. All right, we're expanding our medical misinformation policies on YouTube with new guidelines on vaccines. They say, and we don't have an author here. This is just the YouTube team says, crafting policy around medical misinformation comes charged with inherent challenges and trade-offs. Scientific understanding evolves as new research emerges, and firsthand personal experience regularly plays a powerful role in online discourse. Vaccines in particular have been a source of fierce debate over the years, despite consistent guidance from health authorities about their effectiveness. So you got to be careful, right? There's a lot of things in here I want to say about some of these sentences, but we're not through the policy yet. So we got to be careful about this. All right, so let's keep going. It says, today, we're expanding our medical misinformation policies on YouTube with new guidelines on currently administered vaccines that are approved and confirmed to be safe and effective by local health authorities and the World Health Organization. So You can't even talk about the new policy changes because, you know, if I disagree with any one of those statements there, it might be the end of us on YouTube. So I guess we're just going to have to let that one sit there for a little bit until we dig into this policy a little bit further. Okay, well, this is not looking so good. We have our community guidelines already prohibit certain types of medical misinformation. We see that argument a lot, right? Especially with vaccines. The argument is always that, well, other vaccines have been approved, and like the school argument, for example. Well, we give kids other vaccines in school, so maybe we could just do this one also. And so YouTube is kind of compounding their policies. Well, we've already been doing this for some amount of time, so we're just going to tighten it up a little bit further. And we're just going to continue to narrow free speech and the ability to exercise a dissenting opinion. We're just going to keep narrowing that down because we started a long time ago. Just like what we've been saying, sort of the frog in a slow boiling pot. This is the new format for how society is changing all around us. It starts off small, just 15 days to slow the spread. And then now you're not even allowed to communicate anymore on certain platforms in the name of preventing medical misinformation from going out. So we are a little concerned about the trajectory that America seems to be on, but YouTube isn't. So let's see what else they say. We've long removed content that promotes harmful remedies like drinking turpentine can cure diseases. At the onset of COVID-19, we built on these policies when the pandemic hit, you sure did, and worked with experts to develop 10 new policies around COVID-19 and medical misinformation, which I was going to take you through that policy, but I think we did previously. And it is just an insane policy. I mean, it's really robust, really big. It's got all these different permutations of it. Since last year, we've removed over 130,000 videos for violating our vaccine policies. And isn't that, it's sort of like a pat on the back now. Oh yeah, good. It's like, oh, you're burning books now. Oh, you're just removing dissenting opinions. And they're proud as hell about that. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, because what their framework is that anybody who is on YouTube is too stupid to think for themselves. Obviously, they have to do it for you. So if you're a person who wants to go and watch a flat Earth video or something like that, you're free to do that. I thought in America, you're kind of free to go out and have dissenting opinions and watch whatever you want and come to your own conclusions. And generally speaking, society, at least until 2020, was not really responsible for sort of making sure that you're bubble wrapped and that you have little, foam everywhere you go so that you just don't injure yourself because you're too dumb. You're just sort of like a dumb animal that needs the overlords to sort of just, shepherd you into wherever you need to go. And so they're very proud of this. 130,000 videos. It's probably like, the information in those videos was so problematic that they probably saved, 130 billion people or something, according to their statistics. So very excited. YouTube is doing cartwheels. We're saving lives and stopping misinformation. And we're just, having to do that at the expense of free speech and dissenting opinion. So, okay, that's where this is going. Throughout this work, they say, we learned important lessons about how to design and enforce nuanced medical misinformation policies at scale. Working closely with health authorities, like Fauci, Rochelle Walensky, all of those really estimable people, we looked to balance our commitment to an open platform with the need to remove egregious, harmful content, as defined by them. We've steadily seen false claims about the coronavirus vaccines spill over into misinformation about vaccines in general. And we're now at a point where it's more important than ever to expand the work we started with COVID-19 to other vaccines. And so YouTube, as I said, very excited about this. They're going through and they're continuing. Let's see. It says specifically content that falsely alleges that approved vaccines are dangerous or cause chronic health effects, claims that vaccines do not reduce the transmission or the contraction of the virus, of the disease, or contains misinformation on the substances contained in the vaccines will all be removed. Also includes content that falsely says approved vaccines cause autism, cancer, or infertility. The substances in vaccines can track those who receive them. Our policies not only cover specific routine immunizations like for measles and hepatitis B, but also to general statements about vaccines. Continues, says, as with our COVID guidelines, we consulted, it's nice, with local international health organizations and experts in developing these policies. For example, our new guidance on vaccine side effects map to public vaccine resources that are provided by health authorities and backed by medical consensus. These policy changes will go into effect today. And as with any significant update, it's going to take time for our systems to fully ramp up enforcement. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like. You may recall that we already had a video. We've had a warning on our channel. Then we got a strike for the Joe Rogan video, and then they sort of removed that strike because we didn't say anything wrong. I mean, we're complying with the rules, and it's just commentary on things that are happening around us. So I'm very curious to see if how this is going to be enforced, whatever that looks like. It continues. There are some exceptions to the guidelines, given the importance of public discussion and debate to the scientific process. Yes, we will continue to allow content on vaccine policies. Okay, new vaccine trials and historic vaccine successes or failures on YouTube. Personal testimonials related to vaccines are also going to be allowed, so long as the video doesn't violate other community guidelines or the channel doesn't show a pattern of promoting vaccine hesitancy. Uh-oh, what the heck does that mean? Promoting vaccine hesitancy. Oh, a pattern of that. So you may be a channel that doesn't actually make any particular claims, doesn't actually wade into the science, but has a general disdain for, let's say, vaccine mandates, and maybe some YouTube censor just decides that sounds a lot like vaccine hesitancy. That sounds like somebody who may be challenging whatever the standard narrative happens to be. So it's a little bit of a gray area. And of course, that impacts this channel because we are strongly against the vaccine mandates. Never said I was against the vaccines, but the mandates has been the biggest problems, and the stripping away of people's personal autonomy and using the government as a bully to literally twist people's arms or take away their jobs in order to make sure that they fall into compliance. That's the problem. And that's where this has always been going, and it's not stopping. We're going to talk more about the consequences of these mandates here as we continue through this segment. All of this, YouTube says, complements our ongoing work to raise up authoritative health information on our platform and connect people with credible, quality health content and sources. And we've seen a lot of this here, in particular on our channel, that most of the content that we create seems like it is siloed off. And you can take a look at our metrics. They're just not showing our content to other people. Our channel is basically stagnated in growth completely. And it's been because YouTube has unequivocally said they're going to downplay the non-authoritative sources in favor of the authoritative sources. What are the authoritative sources? Well, it's not us. It's CNN, MSNBC, it's the CDC, the World Health Organization, and anybody else who's not following the mainstream narrative gets just sort of put on the side because it is contrary to what YouTube wants the narrative to be, in my humble opinion. Today's policy update is an important step to address vaccine and health misinformation on our platform. We're going to continue to invest across the board in policies and in products that bring high quality information to our viewers and the entire YouTube community. Well, one of the reasons I go on YouTube is because I want to hear people's interesting takes. I want to hear what they have to say about a particular issue. And a lot of the most interesting takes are the non-standard perspectives. And every single month that goes by, YouTube just sort of makes it more and more difficult to get out there and share your perspective. It's really a tragedy. Now, I wanted to show you something as I was going through the rest of the actual policy. So that was from the blog post. Now YouTube is saying that, take a look at this, that certain types of misleading or deceptive content with serious risk of egregious harm are not allowed on YouTube. And we've sort of danced around all of these issues. If you've been with this channel for some time, any misinformation policies, whatever that is, but the elections misinformation policy right after January 6th, they didn't want anybody to come out and say that Joe Biden is an illegitimate president. They said, nope, you can't talk about that anymore. So anybody who is sort of challenging the election is now walking in a gray zone, the election misinformation policy. And so what has that done? Well, that has really chilled the speech. It has caused a bunch of people to not talk about it. It's caused a bunch of channels to just sort of pivot away from any of those conversations that were taking place. And now it's sort of coming coming full circle. We're seeing that that same framework is being applied everywhere else. They rolled out their COVID-19 medical misinformation policy some time ago, and now they have a vaccine misinformation policy here. But take a look at this. Let's put our pen on and let's read this here. It says, hey, content creators, please take these rules seriously. If a YouTube creator's on and or off-platform behavior, one more time, if a YouTube creator's on and or off-platform behavior harms our users, community, employees, or ecosystem, we may respond based on a number of factors, including but not limited to the egregiousness of their actions and whether a pattern of harmful behavior exists. Our response will range from suspending a creator's privileges to account termination. See that right there, folks? This is the big change here that is slowly being rolled out. YouTube is saying, look, it's our platform, all right? So we're going to do what we got to do to protect the sanctity of the information here. We don't like free speech. We don't like dissenting opinions. We don't want people to be able to share a unique perspective. And so what we're going to be doing now is removing that medical misinformation and the election misinformation and any other misinformation that we just deem to be too dangerous to whatever we think is worth protecting. So they make those decisions, and it was limited to YouTube. Just limited to the YouTube platform. And so what happened, right? A lot of people created off YouTube platforms, and you can see major content creators doing this across the board. And we've done it here, right? We have a locals platform where the idea is that we have conversations that are a little bit too spicy for YouTube. Those can take place over there. Meanwhile, we're building a community, having monthly meetups, connecting during the live streams, asking questions, and sort of building something that's a parallel system, a parallel community to YouTube. And that used to be a good solution because YouTube would say, it's too spicy over here. We say, no problem. We're going to play by your rules and we're going to take our content elsewhere. That's pretty fair, right? It's YouTube's platform to some degree. We create a bunch of stuff for them, and we have this symbiotic relationship most of the time. But YouTube said, well, some of that stuff's just too much for us. Can you just take it outside? Okay, we'll do that. We'll take it outside. And the two worlds were able to live together in harmony. Not anymore. YouTube doesn't like what you're doing off their platform. They don't care. They're just going to tell you, oh, well, you're gone because we don't like your information. And you might be asking yourself, well, what if all of the on-platform content on YouTube happens to be pretty good, but you save all of the spicy stuff for off-platform? Well, what YouTube is recognizing now is that YouTube is the first meeting. It's like going to a cocktail party. You go to a cocktail party, you don't really spend a lot of time with a lot of people. You just hang out. Hey, what's your name? Yeah, we'll connect at a later date. We'll have give me your card. I'll give you my card. Have your people call my people, and we'll reconnect at a later date. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. And YouTube is recognizing that that is sort of what their platform is becoming. After that cocktail party, people are now connecting and saying, you know what, we should actually go out and have a more solid meeting later down the road where we can have some real conversations. The cocktail party is not that interesting. It's not a good forum or a venue to have these conversations, but we'll really connect later down the line. And what YouTube is saying is they don't like that at all. They don't want you to come to their cocktail party if you're going to be taking their guests and having a conversation with them outside of the platform. And so they're going to now sort of threaten you if you are somebody who is doing something off of YouTube that they don't like, and they consider that to be harmful to their users or dangerous to the community or to the ecosystem, whatever the hell that is, we may respond, and they may just throw you right off the platform. So any of the big content creators that always, kind of cut their show off and, hey, Steven Crowder, go over to Mug Club. Ben Shapiro, go over to this. Tim Pool, go over here, right? Now YouTube is bringing that within the purview of their domain because it's their ecosystem. They own it. And if you're doing something that they don't like, that's the end of the line. Sorry, everybody. So that's what's happening now. And man, I'm really fortunate that we have been building up on Rumble and some of these other platforms. because I can see where this is all going. Now, let's go into the actual vaccine misinformation policy. We just read the blog post. We now know that YouTube is extending the scope of their enforcement to not just the YouTube platform, but everywhere else. And if they don't like you, well, that's just too bad. But now let's go into the actual nuts and bolts of the rules. When you go over and you click the guidelines, it says this, and a lot of this is pretty repetitive. Let's get this laser pointer back on. It says YouTube doesn't allow content that poses a serious risk of egregious harm. So you got to be on, what does that mean? I don't know. To me, that would mean, physical injury or death. By spreading medical misinformation about currently administered vaccines that are approved and confirmed to be safe by local health authorities and by the World Health Organization. This is limited to content that contradicts local health authorities or the WHO's guidance on safety, efficacy, and ingredients. If you're posting content, don't post it if it includes harmful misinformation. All right, well, what does that mean, YouTube? Tell us. Vaccine safety. Okay, content alleging that the vaccine causes chronic side effects outside of rare side effects that are recognized by health authorities. Okay, what if you disagreed with how that data was being collected, or you disagreed with how the health authorities were analyzing that data, right? So they're just going to the standard health authorities, and there's a lot of doctors and medical providers that have a differing of opinion, not about the results, but about how that data is being gathered in the first place. How about the efficacy of vaccines? Content claiming that vaccines do not reduce the transmission or the contraction of the disease. Can't talk about that. Whoa, all right. How about ingredients in the vaccines? So contents misrepresenting the substances contained in the vaccines. And we have some pretty, interesting examples here. And not much of it actually pertains to COVID. Let's see what we have. It says, here are some claims of content that's not allowed on YouTube. We've got claims that vaccines cause chronic side effects like cancer, diabetes, or other side effects. Claims that vaccines do not reduce the risk of contracting illness. Claims that vaccines contain substances that are not on the vaccine ingredient list, like biological matter from fetuses, fetal tissue, fetal cell lines, or other animal byproducts. Also claims that vaccines contain substances or devices meant to track or identify those who've received them. I think that probably means sort of within the vaccine substrate itself, not the sort of tracking that the CDC would be doing. Claims that vaccines alter a person's genetic makeup. Claims that the MMR vaccine causes autism. Claims, so that's really not even related to COVID, but they're lumping that in there because they want, I guess, vaccine efficacy content only. Claims that vaccines are part of a depopulation agenda. Claims that the flu vaccine causes chronic side effects like infertility. Claims that the HPV vaccine causes chronic side effects like paralysis. All right. And so those are some examples. Some stuff may be allowed if it's educational, scientific, artistic, or testimonial. May allow content that violates these if it includes additional context in the video, audio, title, or description. This is not a free pass to promote misinformation, they say. Additional context may include countervailing views from local health authorities or medical experts. We may also make exceptions if the purpose of the content is to condemn, dispute, or satirize misinformation that violates our policies. Okay, so if you want to come out and make fun of the anti-vaxxers, that's okay. But if you want to make fun of the pro-vaxxers, I'm not so sure that that's going to be allowed anymore. And we do a lot of that here. Okay, let's see what else is here. Like a protest or public hearing, provided the content does not aim to promote misinformation that violates our policies. YouTube also believes people should be able to share their own experience, including personal experiences with vaccinations. This means we may make exceptions for content where creators describe firsthand experiences from themselves or their family. At the same time, we recognize there's a difference between sharing personal experiences and promoting misinformation about vaccines. To address this balance, we're going to remove content or channels if they include other policy violations and demonstrate a pattern of promoting vaccine misinformation. So, okay. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to make fun of anybody anymore. We're going to continue to do that because it's not medical misinformation, right? We're talking about policy decisions that the government is imposing. We almost never actually talk about the efficacy of the vaccine or the safety of any of that. That's not really what the focus of this channel has been. I've always been somebody who's encouraged people to talk to their doctor, make a proper medical decision for themselves, and act accordingly. But what we're seeing that I have a problem with is the mandation of everything. The mandating of these policies across the board crosses that sacred line, violates that agreement between the government and the governed, that very sacred confirmation of our natural rights that are going to be protected indefinitely. They're stepping over the line by enforcing these mandates, and that is really what I have a problem with. And I didn't see anything there about that. We didn't talk about mandates at all in there. This was all kind of more or less sort of tightening up the medical misinformation policy, which we've never really gotten into, but it still is concerning, right? It's still a concerning thing regardless of what you're talking about. I'm somebody who's basically a free speech absolutist. If you want to get out there and spout a bunch of crazy ideas, I think that that's actually a good thing for society. What ends up happening now is people look at these policies and they say, why can't we even talk about it? Why are we not even allowed to question this stuff? And YouTube is supposed to be the alternative to the mainstream media. It's not supposed to be Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. And those people are not happy that an alternative exists, but is it really going to be that much of an alternative anymore? Yes, it's going to be a bunch of people who can share their perspectives, but as long as they're within the confines of the safe space that YouTube wants to create, not only on their platform, but also off their platform. They don't even want you talking about this stuff in your own communities off the internet. They're going to kick you out of the cocktail party now that they own the whole building. So let's take a look at what happens if you violate it. We've got the 3 strikes rules. If you get 3 strikes within 90 days, channel goes bye-bye. You can learn more about the system there. And so they do give you some warnings. We got a strike and then they removed the strike, but they still suspended us for 7 days. And I don't know what happened there. I think that was a bunch of people reporting of the video. Some YouTube censor got it, posted it on Twitter, got a lot of attention over there, and then they reversed course, thankfully. But, it is still sort of a precarious position to be in as somebody who wants to do a show, who wants to do some good in the world, who wants to connect with an audience largely on YouTube. They're making it a lot more difficult to do that. And I say that as somebody who is trying my best to just explore some ideas, kind of open up some of these issues and analyze them and have a conversation about it. I think that's more useful if that's done out in the open. That gives people a lot of opportunity to expose my idiocy, to say, that's a stupid thing to say. Why are you so dumb, Rob? And believe me, I get a lot of emails about that and a lot of comments. And that's because this conversation is taking place out in the open. Now what YouTube is doing is saying, no, you're not allowed to do that anymore. So all of those conversations are going to go underground, just like the vaccine mandates are pushing people into very difficult positions and hardening a lot of perspectives in this pandemic. The limitations on free speech are going to do the exact same thing. People are going to look at this and say, why can't we talk about it anymore? Very strange. Very, very strange that the overlords who have taken everything away from everybody over the last 18 months, taken your property away, taken your kids' autonomy away in schools, have taken away your jobs in many cases, are wrecking the entire country. They're taking away your free speech now, and they're mandating that you go into compliance. People are going to watch this change and say, there's something else going on here. And I'm not sure that they're wrong about that. So Drudge Report, a website that used to be quite anti-establishment that has since shifted into establishment, as far as I can tell, had a very, very telling headline today. Says that YouTube bans all anti-vax content and Google ends free speech. And this is something that we've been calling the Great Purge. It continues on. We're seeing that the vaccine mandates are being used to sort of root people out of the military, to root doctors and nurses out of the hospitals, to throw firefighters out of fire departments, and to eliminate police officers from their departments as well. It is something that is cascading throughout the entire country. And we're seeing the consequences now in effect. North Carolina hospital fires 175 unvaccinated workers. North Carolina-based hospital system let go 175 people when they failed to comply with the vaccine mandate. This was posted over on Axios. They say it's one of the largest ever cases of mass terminations spurred by a vaccine requirement. Over 99%, though, of its employees have adhered to the mandate, according to Novant director, somebody named Megan Rivers. And so 175, one of the largest mass terminations ever, spurred by a vaccine mandate. It's a lot of people. 175 people, 175 families, people who are medical healthcare workers in a hospital in the middle of a pandemic. It's kind of weird that you'd be firing those people. It's 18 months later into this thing. Presumably they have been working next to COVID patients, saving lives in the healthcare system, and suddenly they're disposable now. That's kind of weird because they didn't get the vaccine mandate. That's interesting. So the largest ever, well, currently, that's going to change real soon because United Airlines is now going to lay off 600 workers, not just a measly 175. 600 workers are refusing to get vaccinated from United Airlines, and they're going to begin the process of laying them off, it said on Tuesday. Chicago-based airline said 99% of its workforce has gotten it. United is going to move to fire those who did not seek an exemption or provide proof of vaccination, but the carrier will give them one more chance to comply and bend the knee. It was an incredibly difficult decision, but keeping our team safe has always been our first priority. And, I guess a vaccine mandate is going to solve that. So can't argue with that because it's safe and effective. Check the CDC guidelines. Let's see what else is going on here. So we've got airlines letting people go. We've got hospitals letting people go. Looks like the Catholics are also going to be letting some people go. The Vatican orders all employees to get the vaccine or submit to testing. The Vatican, the Catholic Church, the Vatican City state said on Tuesday that it's going to require all employees to provide proof of vaccination or documentation of a recent negative COVID test. And I say this as somebody who's been to the Vatican as a, semi-good Catholic. Okay, I guess that's one way to approach the church. Why it matters, Pope Francis was vaccinated in January, has been campaigning for people to get the shots, calling it a moral duty. Some Catholics, however, have argued for exemptions on religious grounds. Employees without proper documentation are going to be considered unjustly absent and receive no salary per the Post. So if you're somebody who's watching this vaccine mandate nonsense, then what we're talking about is, in many cases, people wanting religious exemptions. Oh, well, I'm Catholic, and so maybe I might want an exemption because I have some deep-seated fundamental religious beliefs about a lot of different things that might justify that. But the Pope said, sorry, the Catholic Pope is now out there saying, no, it's a moral duty. So there are no religious exemptions. Is that what we're supposed to take for this for Catholics now? Because the Pope has come out and basically said that even in the Vatican, you're now ordered to go and get the vaccine. Employees without proper documentation considered unjustly absent, no salary. Vatican is not allowing exemptions at the moment. No religious exemptions, even in the Catholic Church, even in the Vatican. Though the Secretariat of State and the city's health department are going to review the issue. New policy goes into effect October 1st, which is right around the corner. Roughly 82% of Catholic adults in the U.S. say they're at least partially vaccinated as of August. So no religious exemptions for the Catholics at the Vatican, I guess. So why would you get one anywhere else in this country? Which is just amazing, isn't it? Now, we talked about Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday, and she was at a church, speaking of religion. And so I started to kind of put two and two together. We identified her yesterday as the new COVID Jesus because she has an obligation to spread the good word, and she needs apostles to do it. And she's got a necklace. It's not a crucifix, but it is something else.
I prayed a lot to God during this time. And you know what? God did answer our prayers. He made the smartest men and women, the scientists, the doctors, the researchers. He made them come up with a vaccine. That is from God to us. And we must say, thank you, God. Thank you. And I wear my vaccinated necklace all the time to say, I'm vaccinated. All of you. Yes, I know you're vaccinated. You're the smart ones. But you know there's people out there who aren't listening to God and what God wants. You know this. You know who they are. I need you to be my apostles.
What?
I need you to go out and talk about it and say, we owe this to each other. We love each other. Jesus taught us to love one another. And how do you show that love? But to care about each other enough to say, please get vaccinated because I love you. I want you to live. I want our kids to be safe when they're in schools. I want you to be safe when you go to a doctor's office or to a hospital and are treated by somebody. You don't want to get the virus from them. You're already sick or you wouldn't be there. We have to solve this, my friends. I need every one of you. I need you to let them know that this is how we can fight this pandemic, come back to normal, and then start talking about the real issues that we have to. Fighting systemic racial injustice, which exists today. And if there's a denier, I will take you on any day because I've seen it. I know it exists. And we are not going to have a blind eye to this ever again any longer under my
COVID Jesus is back in business now, folks. And so maybe Pope Francis got the memo from Governor Hochul. Oh, that's nice that there is now a walking, talking incarnate of Jesus Christ walking around this planet. And she needs apostles, dang it. Pope sprung right into action and made sure that the Vatican fell into compliance. We were having some questions yesterday about that necklace. You can take a look at this, got a close-up of it here. Vaxxed. There's no crucifix. Of course, she's in a Christian church, but this is the new religion. This is the new cult of COVID, and they have a walking Jesus that is now in need of apostles to go and spread the word. And so one of the most insane things I've heard from an elected official recently. Here is what the Vatican had to say about it. This was the official order. You can see this is in Italian here, but translated, it says that this is a general decree from the Cardinal of the Secretary of State. It says, with reference to the ordinance of the Pontifical Commission of Vatican City, public health emergencies, blah, blah, blah. Here's what we've got. The obligation to possess certification indicated on Article 1 that all personnel, superiors, officials, auxiliaries, all must comply. It extends to all external collaborators and basically everybody else who's coming through the Vatican. With the exception of certain checks, each individual organization is required to check compliance with the new vaccine regulations upon entering, leaving, establishing, identifying parties, and all of that stuff. Departments are concerned, it says, that personnel without a green pass, they may, as an alternative, present a certificate of negativity. So that's the test that was issued from Italy, somewhere that has a rapid molecular antigenic test. Got to comply with the orders of the Vatican. Personnel not in possession of these certifications cannot access the workplace. They must be considered unjustly absent. No pay is due except Social Security and welfare. The evaluation of the elements for possible exemption is now going to be considered. Submit your requests over to the General Affairs Committee. Any subject are subject to further restrictions to other Vatican health requirements. This is in force on October 1st, signed off by Peter Cardinal Parolin. Okay, Vatican City, September 28th. So no medical exemptions, even at the Vatican. Isn't that great? Now, so the vaccine mandates are rolling out all across the United States, and a lot of people have been scratching their heads and saying, well, what about enforcement? What about enforceability? I've even made that point, right? I've said specifically, well, that Joe Biden can come out and mandate this all he wants, but he's got to have an enforcement mechanism, and we didn't see that in any of the OSHA requirements or the OSHA regulations. So what's he going to do about it? Well, he's got to create some sort of enforcement mechanism in order to execute his will. And when we were thinking about this, we were analogizing it over to the IRS, right? IRS is a massive, gigantic, wasteful government bureaucracy that gobbles up a lot of personnel and resources from all of us every single stinking year. And they sort of will go and monitor all of the different businesses. So we were thinking about enforcement in that term. How is the federal government going to be able to enforce all of this? Are they going to create a COVID department service The CDS, what are they going to create in order to implement and make sure that businesses are falling into compliance? Are we going to see something else as disgusting as the IRS? Probably. And so there was no indication about where that was going to come from. What was the basis for this new enforcement agency? Well, they're working on it, folks. Biden now is trying to introduce this into the new Build Back Better bill, a $3.5 trillion, 2,465 page bill. He wants vaccine enforcement mechanisms in there that could fine firms up to $700,000 if they fail to mandate the vaccines. The mechanism is buried on page 168 of the Democrats' quote reconciliation spending bill, going to allow a tenfold increase in fines for businesses with 100 or more employees that willfully and repeatedly violate the new law. Increased fines on employers could go as high as $70,000 for serious infractions, all the way up to $700,000 for more than that. If enacted, the fines could easily bankrupt companies, they note here. It comes after OSHA published an emergency 19 garbage unconstitutional rule in the Federal Register this summer, which added COVID-19 to a list of possible workplace hazards. Nancy Pelosi has not yet announced when the House will vote on the reconciliation bill that includes this new enforcement mechanism. Biden announced back in early September that vaccine mandates are going to be going out. He demanded that healthcare workers who receive Medicare, like 17 million people, all get vaccinated, all different healthcare workers throughout the entire country. Now he's talking about raising fines on something like 100 million employees across the federal government. Substantial fines could be at least $14,000 per incident, and noncompliance is about to go 10 times higher than that. $700,000 for each willful or repeated violation. That is the new enforcement mechanism that the Democrats are trying to cram down all of our gullets in the new spending bills. Oh, my friends, what a world we're living in. And so we've got some serious business to attend to. I am wrapping up here. This is my last day in Arlington, Texas. I'm going to be back tomorrow on regular schedule, but I wanted to try to get a short video out here before we take off. And so we'll leave it there. I want to thank you for being here and a part of the show today. We'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow, 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody else have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.